That everybody was drooling with FOMO. It was just a special time. We're done. That FTX has sort of sobered everybody up. It's a new era. But long term, these big TradFi companies declaring this an asset class, and they all have hundreds, if not thousands, of salespeople who are visiting advisors all the time. And now they have a Bitcoin ETF in their toolbox for these advisors, and they're going to pitch them on it because you can charge more than a Vanguard fund or competing with them. That's just like an army of salespeople doing bidding on the behalf of Bitcoin. That I think is the more important takeaway long term. But I just not getting into the short term stuff. If anything, I try to underplay it now. Yeah, we'll see what happens short term. Could be a sell off, could be less volume than you think, but I would have the 5 to 10 year vision in mind.
There are two major Bitcoin catalysts that are inevitable. The first is the Bitcoin halving. The second is the spot Bitcoin ETF. Last week, CoinTelegraph tweeted out a false alarm that BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF had been approved. Bitcoin shot up 10% immediately on the news to over $30,000. It was a small taste of what the real approval will bring. And that price action was entirely retail, no institutional buyers. Then, Bloomberg Analyst Eric Balcunhas broke down what to expect once a spot Bitcoin ETF is really approved. Eric is a senior ETF analyst at Bloomberg. When it comes to ETFs, he's the top expert in the space. In his interview, he urged investors to focus on the big picture. BlackRock, Fidelity, and all the other TradFi companies have thousands of salespeople. They are visiting advisors and wealth managers all the time. Once they have the Bitcoin ETF in their toolbox, there will be an army of salespeople pitching Bitcoin to the wealthiest institutions and individuals in the world. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where both Eric and his colleague break down why investors should be looking at the 5 to 10 year timeline for the Bitcoin ETF. Also guys, I have just launched a daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. I was so sick of seeing people charge hundreds to thousands of dollars per month for on-chain crypto data and breakdowns. So to give out as much value to you as possible, I'm sending out a 5-minute daily newsletter which will cover expert predictions, breakdowns of on-chain crypto data, and any breaking news that you need to know all in a nutshell. And my promise to you is it will be completely free forever. Click the first link in my description, enter your email to join over 5,000 others in becoming a better crypto investor right now. If you don't like it, I will personally send you $1 whole, so you literally have nothing to lose. Now here's Eric on the Bitcoin ETFs.
When we started this, we actually had the date thinking that ARK was due right around Christmas. We actually saw the public registry and we realized it's actually January 10th. But even with that, we're sticking to 75% by the end of this calendar year. And then we're going up to 90 by January because of that January hard stop. But I do think in terms of the spirit of our odds, we were out on a limb early in the summer with a lot of doubters and haters. And so relative to all that noise and all that pushback and all the people, even inside the industry, who were like, oh, late 2024 or years, it'll be years. I'm looking at January 10th as sort of us on top of this, and our odds were largely on the money, especially because if it is January 10th, I bet we hear about the approval in 2023. I bet the word gets out that, okay, they're doing this and it's lined up for January such and such. But to James's point, if they don't approve on January 10th, they have to now come up with an entirely new reason. And if that was their plan, they wouldn't have reached out to the issuers with comments and said, here, can you tweak this, do this, explain this, put this disclaimer in? And so we feel like they're probably going to do what they did with Ether, which is accelerate the rest of them, move them up to ARK state, and then let them all go out in 2 rounds or maybe all on the same day like Ether was, whoever's ready or whatnot.
My view is like, that kind of hinted to me that like our view of how likely this is to get approved is not in the markets. Like people just were not expecting that and we're very bullish on it. So one, I don't know if the fact that this just happened and people are paying closer attention, like this might be more priced in than it was, as cliche as that sounds. But we were on the record, and both Eric and I and Nate Geraci, who it runs the ETF store. Basically, we thought this Bitcoin ETF, spot Bitcoin ETF, would be the biggest launch in history from a grassroots perspective. There's some funds that launch with like tens of billions of dollars from institutions, but we thought this would be like, they would get over $1 billion in a day. Now, if all of them launch at one time, it might not, like they kind of build momentum on each other. If there's one ETF that's launching, volume begets more flows. That's what happened with BitO. So if a whole slew of them launch, maybe we don't see like the largest launch of all time, but I've still and always will believe that this, like when this happens, it's going to be a big deal. But yeah, I think like people are more priced in and ready for it to happen. I don't know if I think there would be a huge move up, but I don't think it's going to send us anywhere. Like I saw people saying when we finally going to get it, it's going to send us to 50,000. I think one thing to say is when BitO launched, it was a huge Bitcoin bull market in October 2021, right? Like that was more price sending flows to the ETF versus the ETF sending price to Bitcoin, if you know what I mean. Like, it was more the price of Bitcoin and the power of Bitcoin's price movements that was driving BitO getting over $1 billion in 2 days, than vice versa. And I think if we don't have like a major raging bull market, we're not going to see that same type of like visceral demand, but there is going to be demand. People are going to leave those futures ETFs. GBTC should be able to convert. So who knows what's going to happen there if there's people hedged. So basically what you do is you go long GBTC and you're short Bitcoin. If all of a sudden that discount's gone and you can unlock it, people are going to have to buy Bitcoin to take off those shorts. So how many shorts are there on Bitcoin? How many people are just going to sell and liquidate?
We certainly saw a short squeeze yesterday. Like, even if this was just someone trying to trigger something, even we had seen hundreds of millions before the news and then another 100 million even just on that news on a short squeeze. So if shorts gather back up, I think that's a very, very likely, I would say, scenario that we see that.
Back to this idea, Michael Saylor was on, and I think he nailed it. He said, look, if you have 10 big asset managers, Fidelity, BlackRock, these are the biggest in the world. If they're declaring Bitcoin an asset class, that's all you need to know. Now, whether it trades up on, before, buy the new rumors, sell the news, that's probably a little what's going to happen. And whether there's not as much volume as people thought, and some of the media declared a dud because it only saw, 50 million trading in the first day. Ether futures were obviously underwhelming. I just wouldn't get focused on that. We're not in a mania phase like we were in 2021. That was a mania. BitO launched into like Beatlemania of like investing. It's all over.
So did CME and CBOE Futures, by the way, and both of those were dead top of the market.
Everybody was drooling with FOMO. It was just a special time. We're done. That FTX has sort of sobered everybody up. It's a new era. But long term, these big TradFi companies declaring this an asset class, and they all have hundreds, if not thousands, of salespeople who are visiting advisors all the time. And now they have a Bitcoin ETF in their toolbox for these advisors, and they're going to pitch them on it because you can charge more than a Vanguard fund or competing with them. That's just like an army of salespeople doing bidding on the behalf of Bitcoin. That, I think, is the more important takeaway long term. But I just not getting into the short term stuff. If anything, I try to underplay it now. Yeah, we'll see what happens short term. Could be a sell off, could be less volume than you think, but I would have the 5 to 10 year vision in mind.
Yeah, the one thing I would say that's actually your end of the year comment. The one reason why we were 75% for 2024 or 2023 is partially because we don't know exactly what happens next with the Grayscale case. Honestly, we should find out this week or possibly next week because the SEC didn't go for that en banc appeal. So if the SEC needs to make a decision regarding Grayscale before the end of the year, then we're going to get probably every other application is going to get approved before the end of the year. So we don't know. We're in a complete gray zone, right? We don't know what the next steps are. This has never happened before. The court case where an SEC order on the 19th before has never been completely vacated. So no one actually knows what the next steps are. So that's why I've been saying it's a soft 75%, because depending on what happens with this Grayscale case, what the courts decide they have to do or what the SEC decides they have to do, we could get a forced order before the end of the year. And we expect the SEC to approve, as I've said, but not guaranteed. So that's the part where it could happen before the end of the year and surprise some people.
So there's Eric Balcunhas on the impending Bitcoin catalyst. The future of the Bitcoin ETF isn't just about the immediate price action, but the long-term adoption by institutional players driven by powerhouses like BlackRock and Fidelity. Remember, these changes will be transformative, and as Eric highlighted, it's essential to maintain a longer-term vision looking 5 to 10 years ahead. For those who want to be at the forefront of crypto news, ensure you're subscribed to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. Every day, we handpick the most crucial insights for you. Just check the first link in the description. Anyway, guys, hope today's video brought you some value. I'll see you all on the next one, and as always, all the best.